Quincy Jones lived like a king for 91 years, mansions, private planes, and dating 22 women simultaneously at the age of 84. Even his children were unaware of his wealth, even though everyone knew he was wealthy. His family came together to recite his will after he passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2024. Tears fell when the estate lawyers announced the fortune. Every child would receive more than the budgets of certain nations. Overnight, her daughter Rashida Jones doubled her wealth. A small island could be purchased with his bare mansion alone. The stats might surprise you as well. Quincy Jones was born in the south side of Chicago on March 14, 1933. The neighborhood was difficult in those days. There was crime everywhere. People suffered daily and there was never enough money. Quincy's mother had a severe mental disorder and his father was a carpenter. Quincy was only 7 years old when she was sent away. He was afraid and bewildered at that moment. As a child, he saw his family disintegrate as the outside world seemed to be in a state of conflict. He quickly came to the conclusion that he needed to find a way out. When he was 10, that way out arrived. He and his family relocated to Breton, Washington, across the nation. In contrast to Chicago, Breton felt serene. Quincy was able to relax as he started to feel secure. He was first captivated by music here. He learned to play the piano and trumpet at school. He practiced till his fingers hurt in every free moment. His new universe was music. He used to sneak into nightclubs as a child just to listen. He had a purpose and a desire to develop because of those evenings. He might never have discovered the thing that would define his life if he hadn't made that move. Quincy desired more though, even in this beautiful house. He chose to fabricate his age at the age of 14 in order to enlist in the National Guard. He believed it would help him become more disciplined and mature more quickly. Instead, it almost killed him. There was a horrible vehicle accident one day. He was shocked and hurt by the impact. He was permanently altered by the painful lesson. From then on, he realized that life could end at any moment. That near miss stuck with him and made him more determined. He was grateful to be alive every day after that. He met the person who would transform his life when he was 15 years old. Ray Charles was that someone. Quincy looked up to Ray, despite the fact that he was only a few years older. The two boys performed together in local clubs because they both had a strong passion for jazz. Quincy also picked up some bad habits from Ray. Among them was heroin. After 5 months of trying, Quincy made the decision to give it up for good. He was sufficiently frightened during that time to exercise caution. Although the music industry was lovely, it was not without its pitfalls. For the remainder of his life, Quincy clung to that lesson. A new opportunity arose at the age of 18. Quincy received a scholarship to attend Boston's Schillinger House of Music, which would eventually change its name to Berklee. Boston was novel and weird. He just had a few clothes, his trumpet, and $10 in his pocket when he arrived. He believed that going to school would improve his life, despite the difficulties. However, he quit after just 6 months. The reason he accepted an invitation to join the band of one of jazz's best band leaders, Lionel Hampton. Quincy made the decision to jump. Leaving his safety and scholarship behind was a risk, but he felt prepared to face reality. He eventually joined Hampton's band at the age of 19. They played up to 325 nights a year, which was a demanding schedule. He performed with jazz greats, Clifford Brown and Art Farmer while on tour. Quincy was learning more quickly than he ever imagined. In 1953, traveling across Europe was both exciting and challenging. In order to covertly record, they occasionally had to leave hotels. Quincy once had to realign Clifford Brown's shoulder when he hurt it prior to a performance. It was an adventure every day. Every failure taught us something. Quincy was restless once more by 1957. He then relocated to Paris to study music with one of the world's most renowned instructors, Nadia Boulanger. Boulanger was severe. She forced him to concentrate on discipline and organization. She informed him that understanding the rules of music was necessary before he could truly be free. Quincy absorbed all of the information. No one in Paris made fun of him because of the hue of his skin. He was genuinely free as an artist for the first time. He was indelibly altered by the lessons and connections he met in France. It influenced his writing style, his conception of music, and his self-perception. He made the decision to apply everything he had learned to his own band when he returned to Europe in 1960. Among the top jazz musicians in the area were the so-called Jones Boys. With great expectations, the tour started. They were adored by the audiences. However, their French promoter took the money and vanished one day. All of a sudden, Quincy had to pay for everyone's salaries, lodging, and return travel. The loss of money was devastating. $145,000 was lost by him. He became indebted and sold his publication rights. He never forgot the difficult lesson he had learned. Although he loved music, he was now also aware of the commercial side of things. Quincy continued on home. He was setting up for titans like Duke Ellington and Count Basie by the time he was in his mid-20s. He was trusted with their tone by singers such as Dinah Washington and Sarah Vaughan. Vaughan used a 55-piece orchestra to create elaborate, opulent charts for his 1958 record. It was among his first significant victories. Every chart and every session was an opportunity to improve. By the age of 25, Quincy was regarded as one of the most acclaimed jazz arrangers. Quincy Jones achieved his first significant mainstream triumph in 1963. Leslie Gore, a 17-year-old singer, was his collaborator. Out of hundreds of demos, they had chosen a song. It's My Party was the tune. However, there was a significant issue. Additionally, Bill Spector desired to record the song with the Crystals, his own band. Everyone believed that Spector would win the race because he was well known. Quincy Jones was determined to prevent that from occurring. He rushed Gore into the studio on March 30, 1963. To get the record out before Spector, they spent the entire night creating a test pressing. And it was successful. It's My Party came out a week later. It immediately shot to the top of the Billboard Hot 100, where it remained for 2 weeks. For 3 weeks, it also topped the R&B chart. Gore's career began with that song, which also demonstrated to the world that Quincy Jones was capable of more than just jazz. It demonstrated that a black producer could also be successful in pop. He went on to develop more Gore successes, such as You Don't Own Me and Judy's Turn to Cry. That final one become an anthem for women's liberation and the civil rights struggle. His career was profoundly altered by this early victory. It enabled him to transition into television and movies and ultimately create successful records for Michael Jackson. Quincy and Frank Sinatra had another significant moment around this time. They collaborated on the album, It Might As Well Be Swing in 1964. So delighted was Sinatra that he prepared Quincy's breakfast himself one morning, while wearing a military costume for a movie shoot. Sinatra was a star already. Quincy's inner circle was evident from this small act. They remained close ever since. Quincy wore a ring bearing Sinatra's family crest every day after he passed away. It wasn't much, yet it had a huge impact. It also demonstrated how music may dissolve racial barriers in the United States. Quincy smashed even another record that year, at the age of just 28. He was appointed vice president by Mercury Records, the first black executive at a major American record label. This was enormous. Many black artists had never been given authority behind the scenes, and the Civil Rights Act had just been enacted. That was altered by Quincy. He encouraged young musicians to pursue their dreams and supported black talent. Many individuals were inspired by the news of his promotion. It was the beginning of his transition from jazz to pop and movies. Quincy was aware that the world was far from ideal, though. He had learned about prejudice the hard way while growing up in Seattle. He experienced what he referred to as the smell of racism, even as a youngster performing live while serving in the National Guard at Fort Lewis. Although they were not permitted to socialize with white customers, black musicians were permitted to perform on stage. For added security, he occasionally carried a .32 revolver in his paper bag. He witnessed black soldiers being mistreated and ridiculed in the military. He never forgot these recollections. It was for this reason that writing the music for The Pawnbroker in 1964 was so impactful. His first Hollywood soundtrack was this one. He was chosen by director Sidney Lumet when he heard his blend of soul and jazz. Quincy barely slept as he hurriedly composed the majority of the music. Even legends like Elvin Jones and Dizzy Gillespie stopped by to record. The picture was the first American film to depict the Holocaust with some nudity that horrified Hollywood, and the score was bold and innovative. A reviewer later claimed that Quincy had permanently altered cinematic music by tearing a film score from its cave and slamming it onto the city streets. He was also shattering stereotypes at the Academy Awards by 1971. He served as the Oscars broadcast's first black musical director that year. He and Bob Russell were the first African Americans to be nominated for Best Original Song only a few years prior. He was now leading the orchestra in front of millions of people at home. It went beyond a job. It was evidence that the greatest stages were the right places for black greatness. However, Quincy never forgot that there were drawbacks to stardom. At the age of 41, he experienced excruciating headache discomfort in 1974. One of the 2 brain aneurysms discovered by the doctors was on the verge of rupturing. He had a 1% chance of survival, according to surgeons. Quincy himself even attended a memorial service, hosted by friends Richard Pryor and Marvin Gaye. He was miraculously spared. However, physicians said he would never be able to play the trumpet again. Quincy made an effort to resist. He picked up his trumpet again while on tour in Japan. However, the agony was unbearable. His playing career ended at that point. He was altered by the near-death encounter. He prioritized his family and creating music like Thriller and We Are the World that may benefit others. On the set of The Wiz in 1978, an unexpected event occurred. When Michael Jackson played the Scarecrow, he was just 19 years old. Quincy Jones, the music supervisor, was present. They weren't sure what to think of one another at first. Sidney Lumet, the film's director, wasn't even sure Michael should be in it. The majority of the Broadway show's tunes didn't appeal to Quincy. However, Quincy noticed a change in Michael's voice when he began to sing. According to Rob Cohen, who oversaw Motown's production at the time, Quincy saw him like a jaguar assessing its prey. That was unlike anyone Quincy had ever heard. During their collaboration, Quincy once asked Michael if he would like to try producing his next solo album. They continued to converse because Michael was interested. They continued to communicate even after the filming was over. A 45-minute phone call was made. They discussed new noises, music, and Michael's true ambitions. Everything would alter after that one meeting. It resulted in Off the Wall, followed by Thriller, and an amazing collaboration that influenced the 1980s sound and sold over 100 million albums. The majority of Epic Records employees believed Quincy was the incorrect choice. When Michael made the decision to create Off the Wall, they felt that he was too traditional and jazzy. Michael felt certain, even though Quincy, who was 45 at the time, hadn't released a major pop hit in years. December 1978 marked the beginning of recording, which continued until June 1979. Before selecting just a handful, they listened to hundreds of songs, including ones by Rod Temperton, Paul McCartney, and Stevie Wonder. For 16 weeks, the album was at the top of the Black Albums chart. In the US, it became the best-selling record of 1980. Quincy was eventually thanked by Epic's managers, who had previously questioned him. Off the Wall demonstrated to the world that Michael Jackson was more than simply a former kid star, and paved the way for even greater success. Thriller followed. Quincy and Michael agreed to perfect each song. Before selecting just 9 tracks, they listened to 800. In April 1982, they began recording on a $750,000 budget. The sessions were difficult. They occasionally managed 3 studios concurrently. The speakers caught fire as a result of their extreme pushing. When they heard the initial mixes, Quincy invited Toto members to perform, and Eddie Van Halen added a legendary guitar solo to beat it. They weren't content. They worked on each music for a week, remixing it until they felt it was perfect. November 29, 1982, saw the release of Thriller. With more than 70 million copies sold worldwide in 37 weeks, at the top of the Billboard 200, it became the best-selling album in history. At its height, it even sold 1 million copies every week. Quincy's success saved the jobs of Epic's executives who had dismissed it. Thriller revolutionized music and demonstrated the limitless potential of Michael and Quincy's partnership. A sour dispute over royalties erupted between Quincy and Michael's estate years after Michael's death. Quincy believed that he should receive a portion of the money made by re-edited versions of songs he had created, such as those featured in Sear D. Soul shows and the 2009 documentary, This Is It. Quincy was only entitled to licensing payments, not a portion of ticket and album sales, according to the Jackson estate. In 2017, a jury in Los Angeles decided in Quincy's favor and gave him $9.4 million. He had hoped for $30 million, but that was far less. Nevertheless, Quincy's total earnings were believed to be over $18 million, including royalties from album sales following Michael's passing. Although Quincy referred to it as a victory for artist rights, it also strained his ties with Michael's family and demonstrated how convoluted these contracts may get after the music is no longer in existence. In a 2018 interview with Vulture, Quincy also used some derogatory language against Michael. He accused him of being avaricious and even claimed that Michael had stolen ideas. Billie Jean's bass line, according to Quincy, was taken from the song State of Independence by Donna Summer, which he produced himself. Additionally, he claimed that Michael believed Greg should have received 10% of the credit for filling Gaines' portion of Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. The Jacksons retaliated. They accused Quincy of being envious and reminded everyone that Quincy had been present the entire time in his capacity as producer. It reopened old wounds. People grew to understand that creating history frequently involved conflicting emotions and hazy credit. Making successful recordings wasn't the only aspect of Quincy's journey either. He also oversaw one of the most significant charitable endeavors ever in 1985. Between 1983 and 1985, Ethiopia was experiencing a catastrophic famine. Up to 1 million people were slaughtered. The catastrophe was widely publicized. Quincy made a significant decision. 45 of America's most well-known singers were gathered by him. Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan, Stevie Wonder, and Michael Jackson were present. On January 28, 1985, they recorded We Are the World at the NM Recording Studios in Hollywood. Everyone paid attention when Quincy put up a sign at the door that read, "Check your ego at the door." Long hours and large personalities were present. A few arrived late. Others initially felt anxious, such as Dylan. The musical arrangements were a labor of love for Stevie Wonder. Springsteen was a stickler for detail. Quincy kept everyone's attention. They weren't there to get notoriety. They were there for a much bigger purpose. More than $55 million was raised in that one session. The song sold 20 million copies overall, including more than 3 million in its first week. It topped the Billboard Hot 100 chart and remained there for 20 weeks. The funds were used to provide Ethiopia and other impacted nations with clean water, food, and medication. The song also permanently altered public perceptions of celebrity activism and served as an inspiration for later benefit events, such as Live Aid. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air's backstory is as bizarre as it is well known. Benny Medina, a music manager, had an idea back in 1989. His own life served as the inspiration. After growing up in poverty in East Los Angeles, he relocated to Beverly Hills to live with an affluent family. Initially, a wealthy white family was supposed to house a black child. However, Medina concluded that it would be novel to use an affluent black family. They were able to investigate class disparities and even discrimination within the black community as a result of that development. Quincy Jones was well known in the entertainment industry already. He had recently inked a significant contract with Warner Brothers Television in 1989. He immediately recognized the potential of Medina's notion when he heard it. Jones promptly arranged a meeting with the head of NBC. Only one surprise remained. Rapper Will Smith, who was having issues with the IRS, had never taken action before. Someone gave Smith a script at a December 1989 gathering at Jones's house. They challenged him to try out right there. At the end of the night, Smith was writing up the contract in a limo parked outside after reading it and nailing the role. In September 1990, the program made its debut. It had 6 seasons of success. The show addressed weighty subjects including social justice, firearms, and racial profiling. Smith became a superstar as a result as well. Among black viewers, it was the second most popular show. Quincy Jones gained even more power as a result of that achievement. He made a daring move in 1990 when he founded Quincy Jones Entertainment. Time Warner Incorporated was a co-venture partner. It wasn't your typical production firm. It was an entire film and television empire. Jones was appointed chairman and CEO. QJ has arrangements with NBC for 2 programs and Warner Brothers for 10 films. Back then, that was a huge issue. Jones became one of the first black executives to lead a business of this size as a result. QJ broke down barriers by producing popular shows like Mad TV, In the House, and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It demonstrated how mainstream entertainment may be influenced by minority leadership. Jones continued to push the envelope. He was a co-founder of Vibe magazine in 1993. This was no ordinary music publication. It swiftly gained cultural clout. September 1993 saw the publication of its inaugural edition. With a 5-year commitment from Time Warner, Vibe provided hip-hop and R&B musicians with the significant attention they merit. Black America's social issues, fashion, and music were all covered by the magazine. Its influence was so great that Vibes spawned related periodicals and TV programs. Even Spin magazine was purchased by Vibe Ventures under Jones's direction. Although Jones had sold his holdings by the late 1990s, Vibe continued to be a significant voice throughout the heyday of hip-hop. Jones continued to do more than just publish. With the help of TV great Don Cornelius and FL Hall of Famer Willie Davis, he founded Quest Broadcasting in 1994. Together, they spent $167 million in TV stations in New Orleans and Atlanta. Making sure black people had a genuine voice in local broadcasting was the aim. Quest controlled 55% of the company, yet owned 20% of its shares. The management was managed by Tribune Company, which kept the remaining 45%. Quest prioritized programs that represented regional communities. They produced talent shows and chat shows that resonated with their audience. This advocated for minority ownership in television. Then 1999 arrived. Quest Broadcasting was sold by Jones and his partners for $270 million. They made $270 million out of $167 million in just 5 years. It was a return of almost 62%. The moment was ideal. The cost of stations was skyrocketing. The sale demonstrated that minority-owned businesses might achieve significant success. Additionally, it established Jones as a successful businessman. He was regarded by many as someone who raised the bar for media entrepreneurs. Jones's private life was as unexpected. He was married to 5 different women and had 7 children. They were between the ages of 30 and 70. Ulla Anderson, Peggy Lipton, and Jerry Caldwell were his 3 previous spouses. However, he also had children with Carol Reynolds and German actress Nastia Kinski. Jones never disclosed this information. He once stated, "I was a dog. All across the world, I had lovers." Even at 72, he maintained that he was introduced to Ivanka Trump, then 25 years old, by designer Tommy Hilfiger. Wrong father, though, Jones continued, joking about her gorgeous legs. He remained connected to all of his children, in spite of his turbulent history. Rashida and Kadada were among others who followed him into the entertainment industry. Public feuds also resulted from that openness. Tupac Shakur made fun of Jones in The Source magazine in 1993. For having children with white women, Tupac made fun of him. In response, Rashida, who was just 17 at the time, wrote a letter. She accused Tupac of pulling down his own people and labeled him an idiot. Peggy Lipton, Rashida's mother, was also furious. However, the narrative took an odd turn. Later, Tupac got to know Kadada Jones. When Tupac passed away in 1996, the two were engaged and in love. Later, Rashida acknowledged that Tupac had expressed regret. The families reconciled. The entire story demonstrated how even unpleasant rivalries could result in improbable connections. If all of that wasn't shocking enough, Quincy Jones continued to push the envelope. He admitted to seeing 22 women at once to GQ and Vulture in 2018, when he was 84 years old. They were in Cape Town, Cairo, Stockholm, Brazil, and Shanghai, among other places. All the women knew about each other, Jones remarked with a laugh. Eventually, his daughters had to take over. He was advised to date women who were more his own age. Jones committed to never being younger than 28. He even made a joke about having gadgets at home that buzzed when a woman was too elderly. Once more, the story went viral. Jones was in the news because he was living his own way. Then there were his allegations on the secrets of Hollywood. He made yet another shocking revelation in an interview in 2018. According to Jones, Marlon Brando had extramarital romances with Marvin Gaye, Richard Pryor, and James Baldwin. He had used whatever to fight. Jones chuckled. Marvin Gaye, Richard Pryor, and James Baldwin. Richard Pryor was open about being bisexual, according to his widow, who even supported him. Long ago, Marlon Brando himself had alluded to his personal experiences. Some family members disputed it all, but the story fit Jones completely. In 1976, he told a French reporter, "I too have had homosexual experiences, and I am not ashamed." On November 3, 2024, Quincy Jones passed away quietly in his home in Bear. He was 91 years old. With his family by his side, the house was silent as they said him farewell. Pancreatic cancer had afflicted Quincy. His death was felt globally, even though most people were initially unaware of it. World leaders, well-known performers, and fans all expressed their sorrow. For more than 70 years, Quincy had influenced music. Thriller, the best-selling record in history, was created by him for Michael Jackson. Additionally, he produced the charity song, "We Are the World," which helped generate millions of dollars for famine relief. His tale was reported by major news agencies, such as Al Jazeera and the BBC. The first black CEO of a major record label was a Chicago-raised boy. They talked about his achievements and enduring influence. Quincy was buried in Hollywood Forever Cemetery following his funeral. For someone who had contributed so much to culture and music, that last homage seemed appropriate. His family was stunned when Quincy's will was read. Nobody anticipated that he would become that wealthy. His estimated net worth at the time of his death was $500 million. Many believe that album production accounted for the majority of that revenue. Quincy, however, was also a savvy businessman. He had founded Quest Records, owned television stations, and founded Vibe magazine during his lengthy career. In addition, he possessed rich real estate and the rights to some of the most well-known tunes in history. All 7 of his children were aware of their father's achievement. The extent of his empire, however, was beyond their wildest expectations. It was an emotional first meeting with the estate lawyers, when they realized they were now a part of one of the largest fortunes in entertainment. Some people cried, while others simply sat in silence. Between $71 million and $83 million would be given to each of Quincy's 7 children: Jolie, Rachel, Martina, Quincy III, Hadada, Rashida, and Kenya. Even Rashida, who already had a lucrative acting and production career and a $25 million personal wealth, was taken aback. What she already possessed was multiplied overnight by her inheritance. They had not anticipated this level of wealth, nor were they only getting money. The inheritance includes property worldwide, company shares, and music rights. Quincy had properly budgeted his money. His business decisions would continue to provide for his children and their families for many years after his passing. Many of his children expressed their gratitude in public. They also discussed the burden of accountability. They were aware that they would need to preserve the wealth their father had amassed and uphold his legacy. The renowned Bear home was one of the most significant components of Quincy's land. At $59.9 million, the mansion is currently up for sale. This gorgeous house has 17 bathrooms, 5 bedrooms, a private movie theater, a recording studio, and even a wine cellar. Quincy spent 6 years working with his close friend, architect Gerald Jerry Allison, to develop its design, which was influenced by the Palace of the Lost City in South Africa. With vistas spanning from the Pacific Ocean to the San Gabriel Mountains, the 2.3-acre home is more than 25,000 square feet in size. Quincy referred to the large circular chamber in the middle of the building as the heart of the house, since it was fashioned after an African mud hut. It contains pictures, honors, and other sentimental items that chronicle his extraordinary life. It's like giving up a live museum of Quincy's career when you sell this house. The family hopes the buyer will value Quincy's creation. Even after the mansion is transferred to new owners, Quincy's legacy and his music will endure.